The time to start prepping for the 2023 fantasy football season is now. That is why we are bringing you our consensus top ranks for the 2023 fantasy football season in our next 4 episodes. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. I'm Lucas Wenzel, and as always, I am joined by my fellow co-hosts, Tyler Plath and Cameron Lawrence, but here's the catch. We're all in person together. Cameron decided to spend the big bucks because he is filthy rich to come up and hang out with Tyler and I, who are already living 10-15 minutes apart from each other. So I am very happy to be joined by both of my co-hosts in person tonight.
Couldn't be happier to be here.
It's so nice being back together again. It's been how many months in the making?
In the making, it's just been a while since Cameron decided to spend money.
At least
5 months since I've been here.
There was snow on the ground.
2 weeks since I've seen,
Yes.
or actually 4 days since I've seen Lucas, but two
That
months,
is true.
5 months since I've been here.
Cameron and I were screwing around down in Florida last week up to some no good shenanigans. As I said, we are bringing you our consensus ranks over the next 4 episodes. We are going to start with our top 15 consensus quarterbacks for the fantasy football season in this episode. And I don't want to waste the people's time because 15 names is a lot to cover. So let's just dive on in, fellas. Alrighty, we are going to work backwards from 15 to 1. You will get all of our consensus ranks. You will be able to get access to all of these statted out players in the 2023 Fantasy Football Fellas Draft Guide coming out on June 1st.
Helmet.
That's a helmet moment. No, I think Colin took the helmet with him. He wore it out of the house. That will be coming June 1st. That will be coming June 1st to you all. But for now, we will cruise through our top 15 quarterbacks, starting at 15 with Anthony Richardson of the Indianapolis Colts, drafted by them 4th overall this year. Look, we all know he's not a prolific passing quarterback. 176 of 273 for 2,500 yards his senior year at Florida. Only 17 passing touchdowns and 9 picks. Name of the game is rushing for Anthony Richardson, right? 103 attempts, 654 yards, 9 touchdowns for him. Look, he steps into an offense now with Shane Steichen as the head coach. He's done wonders for the Philadelphia Eagles. And Jalen Hurts in that offense took them to a Super Bowl. Now Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce. They took Josh Downs in the 3rd round as well. We all have him as a quarterback 15. Look, and I think this is because we don't want to be too optimistic. We all think he's going to start week 1, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is just like balancing optimism and pessimism. Because if we're truly being optimistic, Anthony Richardson is probably a top 10 fantasy quarterback. But if we're being pessimistic, he's outside of the top 20, right? So is 15 more of the balance? How does he come to the quarterback 15 in your guys' rankings?
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit of both. The way I have my rankings set up right now, I've got them all in tiers, and I have Anthony Richardson in a tier of his own, just because he is right. I have him at 15, but he like you said, he could shoot up, he could shoot down. He's the guy that if you're the last guy to take a quarterback off the board, maybe you think, I'm going to take Anthony Richardson here and just take a shot, because you're probably going to know within the first 4 weeks if he's going to be a lot of fun to watch or if he's going to be like they're going to close the playbook. They're going to try to keep him in the pot, because if they're letting him run, he's going to be good for fantasy no matter what. No matter how bad the passing is, he will be good for fantasy if they let him run.
Yeah, and I think this also just is a look at the names ahead of him, and you're like, well, a rookie, right? Yeah. The rushing upside is going to be nice, and he's going to be a very nice second quarterback option for your teams.
Yeah.
But we can't I don't think I'm ready to throw him into the QB1 conversation just yet. I need to see it first.
Yeah. No, well, that's 100% it. I need to see it first. And here's the thing. 90 attempts is going to be the magic number for Anthony Richardson this year. If he can hit 90 rushing attempts, I think he has a legit shot to be a top 12 quarterback, which, again, is only, 4 spots higher than where we have him. But every quarterback that has top 90 rushing attempts in the last decade has finished as a top 12 quarterback in fantasy football. So I think that is the magic number for Anthony Richardson. If he can hit that 90 rushing attempts mark, I think he has a realistic chance of being a starter in your fantasy football lineup by the end of the season in 12-man leagues. Let's keep it moving, though, because, again, we got 15 names to cover. Tua Tagovailoa comes in at 14. This one, admittedly, kind of shocks me a little bit, fellas. Maybe it's just me. Look, 259 completions on 400 passing attempts for Tua last year for over 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 picks. Didn't run the ball a lot. That was only in 13 games, as we all recall. Tua was struggling with concussions, obviously. We'll see how that affects him coming into this year. Adds Devon A-Chain, speedy little guy, to this dynamic Mike McDaniel rushing attack. Here's the thing with Tua Tagovailoa, though. 9th most fantasy points per game last year. 18.4 fantasy points per game. By the time you take out Sam Howell's 1 week and Davis Webb's 1 start as well. 9th in fantasy points per game. He's at quarterback 10 for me. I feel really comfortable having him there personally. Cameron, he's down to your quarterback 16, though. And Ty, he's at your quarterback 13. So, Ty, I'm actually going to have you start because clearly I'm on one end of the opinion. Cameron is on the very other end, and you are smack dab in the middle. So, why are we both right and why are we both wrong all at the same time?
Part of the reason why I've got him at 13 is recognizing that, yes, he was on a very good pace to finish top 10 last year before all of his concussions. All that happened, but we also did see some other quarterbacks get hurt too. Like Lamar Jackson got hurt at the end of the season. Kyler Murray got hurt. Dak Prescott got hurt too. So those are 3 quarterbacks I think we would all feel pretty comfortable saying they would have finished higher than Tua last year.
I mean, for what it's worth, I have them all ahead of Tua still in my rankings.
Right. So I think I can understand the top 12, even top 10 talk for Tua. I just, again, I look ahead and I'm just like, yeah, there are other quarterbacks that would have finished higher than him. He's still going to be a very solid option. I mean, he in the hyper efficient Mike McDaniel offense in Miami, he's going to produce. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle as your weapons, like there's no better duo. That's a pretty bold take, but
I mean, at the same time,
for fantasy purposes, it's probably pretty close.
Yeah, right. I like again, Tua's in a very, very good situation. There really isn't any reason why he can't continue what he was on last year. He didn't really lose a whole lot. So
right. I'm going to give you a chance to rebuttal Ty's claims here before I just put you into the dirt. So explain why Tua is at 16 for you, and then I'll give the case of why I think he should be top 10.
So I do think Tua is going to throw for a lot of yards this season, and I do think he's going to have a pretty decent season passing the ball. I don't have him statted out for a lot of touchdowns. So it is. I got him at 27 passing touchdowns. So
no, he had 25 and 13.
Yeah, I know he did, but you add A-Chain, and the sound is that they want to add another running back as well. I think they're going to try and run the ball closer into the red zone. Obviously, that matters minimally when it comes to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle because they're so, they break big plays. But for me, what it comes down to is he has 0 rushing upside. Like, he is a guy who can finish the season with 5 total points from rushing the entire year. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to because you even look at a guy like Geno, right? Geno could run for 230 yards and have 2 touchdowns again. And all of a sudden that gives him an extra 30, close to 40 fantasy points on Tua that he just can't make up on the ground because he doesn't rush the ball much. And then with concussions in the past and being a smaller guy, he's just not going to run the ball this season.
So I can understand baking in the rushing upside there and that it's like probably the lowest of any guy that could possibly be in the top 10, 12, 15 for your ranking. Here's the thing for Tua, though. The strides that I saw from him last year in Mike McDaniel's system, I think Tua could legitimately be an every week starter in your fantasy football lineups this year. He played 13 games in both 2021 and 2022. He had 4 less completions on 12 more attempts. That's fine. Threw for 900 more yards between the 2 seasons. He increased his yards per attempt by 2 to 8.9 yards per attempt. That was most in the NFL last year. Threw for 9 more touchdowns, limited the turnovers. He threw for 2 less interceptions. He was 3rd in quarterback rating or QBR, excuse me, last year. He was third in quarterback rating, 68.5, 50% on the deep ball. 50%. That's important when you have a Jalen Waddle, a Tyreek Hill, who are going to be streaking downfield. And he wasn't too shabby in the red zone. You talked about limited touchdowns. He wasn't too shabby in the red zone. 65% completion percentage in the red zone. Second best in the league. You hook up Tua Tagovailoa with two of the most dynamic weapons in the entire NFL. Why can't Tua be an every week top 10 starter? That's why he's sitting at 10 in my current quarterback rankings.
No, makes sense.
I'm going to be interested to see where he falls once I fully stat out the Miami Dolphins and everybody else. But Tua's a guy I think I'm going to sneaky like this year. I'm going to need to draft some insurance probably given the injury history, but I'm willing to bake that in. Considering some of these other guys we're going to go through coming up, like Tua's going to be the guy who I trust the most to drop 40 on a given week. That isn't a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields. That doesn't have that same rushing upside. I think Tua's going to be my pick to drop 40 on a given week, and I will gladly take that upside for where I'm probably going to be able to draft him this year.
For sure.
We'll keep it moving. I talked a lot about Tua there. I had to get my words in there. Daniel Jones is our quarterback 13. Finished as a quarterback 9 last year, 3,200 passing yards. Is this true? Only 15 passing touchdowns?
Yep.
I knew it was stupid low, but like that's legit.
Second highest of his career.
No. Daniel Jones. Oh, Danny Dimes. At least he had 120 rushing attempts for 708 yards, 7 touchdowns there as well. Look, hopefully he throws for more touchdowns this year. They gave him enough weapons to do so this offseason. They traded for Darren Waller, drafted Jalen Hyde. They brought back Isaiah Hodgins. You're getting both Wan'Dale Robinson and Sterling Shepard back from injury. He's my quarterback 13, Cam, your quarterback 14, Ty, your quarterback 11. Ty, again, you're the highest out of us here. Is this just purely about rushing upside for you at quarterback 11?
This is, rushing upside for one, but it's the amount of weapons that he has now. I mean, Darren Waller, and I think we need to start putting a little more respect on Darren Waller's name. I know that last year was not a very good season for him at all. But he's still going to be a red zone target for Daniel Jones, getting Jalen Hyatt, who's going to be a field stretcher eventually. He may overtake a Paris Campbell halfway through the season. He showed a lot of chemistry with Isaiah Hodgins, even Sterling Shepard at the beginning of the year before Shepard got hurt, and then even Wan'Dale to a certain extent too. Like, Daniel Jones's situation improved, and they still will want to run the ball with him. Like, that is a Brian Daboll staple, like, in his offense, is to have his quarterback be mobile enough to run for design plays, even some scoring opportunities too. So it's definitely rushing upside. Granted, I don't think it's going to be 700 yards and 7 touchdowns again this year, but it's going to be enough rushing upside to still keep him in that discussion for a quarterback 1 spot on your team.
Again, the magic number for Daniel Jones is going to be 90 rushing attempts. I think that's just going to stick true for a lot of these guys now. If you hit 90 rushing attempts, you're probably going to surpass some of these guys who aren't as mobile in the pocket. Like we'll talk about Trevor Lawrence in a little bit. Where I think we all have him pretty much exactly in the same ranking, but just a guy who's not as mobile as someone like a Daniel Jones or Justin Fields, and could easily be leapfrogged by either guy. Cameron, put a more positive, maybe why is he outside of your top 12 after finishing as a top 12 guy last year, even despite poor stats, and all of a sudden, he could even have an even better year this year?
Yeah, I think it really comes for me the fact that except for touchdowns, he had a career year, and that career year was 3,200 yards. That career year was 15 passing touchdowns. And yes, he only had 5 interceptions this year, but his rushing is what did it for him. Although it's his first season with over 65 rush attempts, and he had 120. This is his first season with over 430 rushing yards. He had 708. And then he had 7 rushing touchdowns, and he had never had more than 2 before. I understand Brian Daboll. We've talked about it. That's more of an offense that he runs, and I assume the rushing will continue, but I just don't believe that he's going to maintain that mark. And I think if he takes a step back, he only gets 3 rushing touchdowns. You start to see 25. That's 25 fantasy points. That's a pretty decent drop off. That even if he does increase passing a little bit, I just don't know if he can make up for what I see him losing in the rushing game this year.
120 attempts just feels like a lot. I think I kind of fall in the middle of you two of like, I like the upside of the Ryan Daboll offense, but at the same time, I don't think he hits the same marks as last year. And he might take a small step forward in the passing game, but does that make up for the decrease in potential rushing as well?
Yeah.
So, like, if you tell me he finishes as a quarterback 9 again this year, I'll probably say cool. Like, doesn't surprise me one bit. But at the same time, like, again, I'm at my quarterback 13, and I think that's probably where I comfortably have him for now. Let's keep it moving here. Kirk Cousins is our quarterback 12. Career high in passing attempts last year, 643 passing attempts, 424 completions, 4,500 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 picks. I believe that was second most of his career. 97 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Does add dynamic Jordan Addison to replace Adam Thielen. I think Kirk will like that. I have Kirk as my quarterback 14. Cam, you have him all the way up at 10. Ty, you're at 12. Cam, just give me the positive spin on Kirk Cousins because I know he's a guy you really, really like this year, especially with the addition of Jordan Addison.
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to two things. I think this team's going to look to throw the ball even more than it did last year. Even if they keep Cook, right? He's another year older. They're going to want to throw the ball. And the second thing is Adam Thielen was their wide receiver 2 last season, and I don't think he ran more than 7 routes down the field to 15 yards or more. Right? Jordan Addison is going to help spread the field out a little bit more. You know, they still have TJ Hawkinson over the middle and KJ Osborne as well. So I think this is going to be a team that throws the ball a ton. And I think Kirk is going to put up a ridiculous amount of yards this year. Not quite. I don't think he's going to put up a 5,000 yard season, but I do think he's going to put up probably a career high in passing yards this year.
So you think, his career high was previously at 4,900, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, was it? All right. So I think
it was 4,900.
Slightly below a career high.
I believe that was back with Washington in I'm not going to remember the right year, 2016 or 17, I believe he was at 4,900 yards.
Mr. Smart guy over here.
Right.
But yeah.
Big brain guy.
Yeah. So I think he could definitely be close to that, and I think he could rack up the touchdowns. Obviously, it helps when you have the best wide receiver in the league on your team for putting up fantasy points. So yeah, that is what I believe. I personally think Kirk is a better passer than Tua. That is why I have Kirk up higher than Tua. And Kirk's, I think, adds just enough on the ground where, you know, it kind of levels the playing field a little bit, whereas I just don't think Tua quite adds that.
Just want to flex quick. It was 2016. So
we have a walking statistician.
Statistician.
Almanac.
Yeah, the helmet myself.
Ty, what say you about Kirk Cousins? Again, we're taking out Minnesota hometown bias. I'm all the way down to 14. I will say, though, I think he is going to finish higher after I finish statting him out the other day. I think I have him statted ahead of. No, I have him behind Dak Prescott by only 2 points, and Dak is my quarterback 9. We'll get to him in a bit. So I think I will move Kirk up eventually, but you have him at 12, little less high than Cameron. Why? Yeah, he's not quite top 10 for you, and why is that?
It's just let's just look at the quarterbacks that we'll talk about here in a second. We're talking about Dak Prescott, Geno Smith, Deshaun Watson, and then we just talked about Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, and even Tua, right? Like everyone except for Tua, they've got some rushing aspect to their game. Kirk just doesn't have that. And everything that's happened this offseason, like Cam said, points to the Vikings wanting to throw the ball more. And we saw career high pass attempts. I shouldn't say pass attempts for Kirk, but like it's been the most pass attempts that we've seen the Vikings have in a long time. So it could go up even more. So look, there's going to be lots of opportunity for Kirk Cousins throwing the ball, and I'm excited for it. I mean, Jordan Addison is a great addition. But it's just you've got rushing quarterbacks around you that are just a little bit better in that area than Kirk is.
And my rebuttal to all of that is I agree with all of you, and I need to move Kirk up in my rankings. Quarterback 14 is too low. He should be.
Hater.
I'm clearly a hater. I originally had Daniel Jones higher because I thought he would take a small step forward this year and still have the more rushing upside than Cousins. But the more digging I do, the more I look at Cousins' numbers, the more I look at the tendencies of the offense. QB7 finished for Kirk last year. Going all the way down to 14 is too far of a drop for me, considering what I see this offense doing this year. He had just as many games over 20 fantasy points last year as he did under 17. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty good number. That means in at least 2/3 of his games last year, he scored at least 17 fantasy points. That's a pretty solid number. And then, you throw in a few 16 and 15, which like not great numbers, but you're not like
Didn't kill
smashing your head against the
Yep.
wall because you started Kirk Cousins that week,
For
right?
sure.
So like Kirk Cousins may end up being one of your safest options this year still. You can probably pick the boom weeks when it's against the poor secondaries, and Kevin O'Connell's just going to want to put on an air raid against them. Outside of that, though, I don't know if Kirk is necessarily going to be your like every week starter. Keep it moving. Deshaun Watson, quarterback 11, only played 6 games last year. Took a year and a half off of football. Took off his how I'll leave it. 99 of 170, 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 picks. That's pretty bad. That's not correct. The rushing stats on the document, he did not rush for 1,700 yards last year. Oh, that's fine. I got a kick out of that. Probably 175 yards and 1 touchdown. There's a hyphen missing in there. Adds Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman this offseason. Here's the thing. 189 passing yards and 30 rushing yards per game. But let me remind you of who we're talking about here. Let me tell you the story of Deshaun Watson before he decided to get into trouble. Before he got himself into a little bit of trouble. 2018, he's quarterback 4. 2019, he was quarterback 5. 2020, he's quarterback 5. We're talking about a previous top 5 guy who in Dynasty was at one point the quarterback 1. Should still have a lot of tread on his wheels. We'll see, though. He's my quarterback 11, Cam's quarterback 9, Tyler's quarterback 14. Ty, you're clearly the most pessimistic. Is he still shaking off the rust? He's outside of your top 12. Why is that?
It's purely just cautious optimism, I gotta say. I have Deshaun Watson in my Dynasty League. And I really, really hope that he comes through because I've got no one else. But the thing that I'm a little concerned about is how long is it going to take Deshaun Watson even this year to get back to the Deshaun Watson that we know? And then also, it is a different offense than what he was in Houston. Yeah, I mean, with Kevin Stefanski as your play caller who wants to run the ball, I just don't think it's as many opportunities as we saw in Houston for Deshaun Watson to be the playmaker that we know and thoroughly enjoy having on our fantasy teams. Mm-hmm. That being said, we know that he can do it because we've seen it 3 years before, right? So it is purely cautious optimism. He's got the talent to do it, but I wonder just maybe is it going to take 6 games into the year where there are other quarterbacks who are already putting up numbers at that point. So Deshaun Watson could get a little bit later of a takeoff, but he will still come through eventually, in my opinion, at the end of the year.
And when we take that 3-year sample size, we're not saying like this is what Deshaun Watson is going to return to. I actually think it's very unlikely Deshaun Watson returns to like top 7 status, just given the nature of some of the guys we talk about in that range, the Hurts, the Allen, the Mahomes, the Burrow, the Jackson, right? Like that's 5 right there. And how confident are we that Deshaun Watson can lead any of them? It's like a literally probably a 1% chance that he does that, right? So just because we throw out those stats does not mean we think he'll finish there. But Ty, I think you brought up an important point. In those 3 seasons, Deshaun Watson, he had 90 rushing attempts in all 3 of those seasons. I keep coming back to this number because that's a really good indicator of whether a quarterback has it in them to finish in that top 5 to 12 range, right? Yeah, and that's really the question. Does he get that done in Kevin Stefanski's offense? When you also have a man by the name of Nicholas Chubb in the backfield, which Cameron, I wonder if that boils into your well, no, that's Ty's ranking. Okay, you give me the positive. Yeah, give me the positive because I'm talking all the negatives and you got him inside the top 10.
He has the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history. You do not give a guy like that unless you're going to let him throw the ball. And I do still think that he has it. I don't think that it just went away, right? There wasn't an injury. Obviously, there was a lot of off-the-field distractions that came with everything that was going on, and I don't think his mind was quite on football for the year and a half before he got back. But I think now a full off season, Amari Cooper still proved that he is a legitimate wide receiver one in this league last season. At home, I should say, he proved it. On the road, not quite as much. But I think that this offense has enough, and I do think that he's going to run the ball. I have Nick Chubb statted out for a ridiculous, 320 some rush attempts this season. And the thing is, they just don't have anybody else in the backfield, right? They have Jerome Ford, but they're not going to use him a ton. So Deshaun Watson's still going to have plenty of attempts to run the ball because Kevin Stefanski wants to run the ball.
Yeah.
And so if he's still got, he's still got some juice in his legs, he can still move around well enough. And like you said, he hasn't gotten hit really in the last 2 years. So it's not like he's, wearing down while he's sitting on the sideline. And so I just think that he's got enough in him that he can put together a good enough season to crack the top 10, and the rushing upside will be there.
I'm just hesitant. The talent is there. We all know the talent is there. Yeah. It's just the blend of the offense. It's not having played football for a year and a half, and hopefully you like to think he used the entire offseason to get in sync with the rest of his guys, but we'll see. Yeah. That's why he's my quarterback 11. I like you basically. You both summed up all my thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I'm optimistic on him, but I'm gonna feel gross if I draft him. Let's be honest. I'm not gonna feel great about it. But I'll probably have him in a league or two.
Yep. So let me transition then. Are you gonna feel gross about drafting Geno Smith this year, who's our quarterback 10?
Yes.
I think I would as well. Ty, you have a little more confidence. He's your quarterback 9. He's Cameron and I's quarterback 12. So he's still in your top 10. I mean, career year for Geno, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody wrote him off. He ain't writing back. And Ty's like, actually, I wrote a few letters, and I'm sending him some nice letters back. Look, career year, 572 passing attempts for nearly 4,300 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 picks. Added 388 on the ground and a score. He does add another lethal weapon. Jackson Smith and Jigba, also adds Zach Charbonnet to the backfield. I like this. In some ways, I just look at him and I'm like, you both cancel each other out. I'm like, I don't know if that means you're going to run more. I don't know if that means you're going to give Geno more opportunities to cook. Ty, it seems like you think Geno's still going to have plenty of opportunity to cook this year.
I have to think so. I mean, you re-signed him to a 3-year deal, and you bring in Jackson Smith and Jigba to help out. To help Geno out. Yes, we have to acknowledge the Zach Charbonnet addition as well. It would be really, really bad analysis. Just criminal Zach Charbonnet. So I think there is definitely a world where Pete Carroll wants to run the football in for touchdowns. So is 30 touchdowns going to happen again? Only if this offense just takes the next prolific step in terms of production. But there are some stats that I saw from Geno last year that really, really give me some optimism going into this year, even with the probable improvements in the running game. Geno Smith last year was first in completion percentage. I believe it was at 70%, which is nuts. Absolutely insane. He was 9th in 20 or more yard completions. He was 6th in QBR. He was 3rd accurate in the league when under pressure. He was 5th in pressure completion percentage. He was 8th in fantasy points per game at 18.5 fantasy points. He was 8th in passing yards, 7th in air yards, 9th in attempts per game. Here's the very, very key stat, though. He was 14th in team pass plays per game. You would like for your top 10 quarterback to be in the top 10, top 12.
Right.
But what that stat says to me, plus all the other ones that I mentioned before, is that Geno is going to be efficient with whatever opportunities he gets. And I think he's got one of the best, if not the best, supporting cast out of all these quarterbacks that we've talked about already in terms of just weapons and offensive line play, even running backs to a certain extent. Zach Charbonnet, he's going to be a receiving threat out of the backfield. Not saying it's going to be 60 receptions or anything, but it'll still be enough. I can't fully jump off of the Geno hype train. So this is kind of my 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because I recognize, again, 30 touchdowns, 4,300 yards probably isn't going to happen again this year. But I still think he'll be very, very productive with the opportunities that he gets.
See, that's how I feel. I feel like I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and he's still my quarterback 12. And I like, yes, they add Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think it's going to take, like, he's going to be a great asset. Don't get me wrong. Don't hear what I'm not saying. Like, Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be a perfectly fine asset for your teams this year. I think it's going to take a year or two before he really becomes a focal point of that offense, because you still have DK Metcalf, who's still young. Tyler Lockett is getting older, but you just add Zach Charbonnet, and I can't, like, the second round capital. They didn't have to go do that.
No.
Like, they had a luxury pick in the first round, used it on a luxury player, and then they went and just killed that by drafting Zach Charbonnet, which I think boils into probably more of your projection for him at quarterback 12, Cameron.
Yeah, I just don't think he's going to get to that 30 touchdown mark, and I think that's kind of what it comes down to, right? They get in the red zone. They got those 2 running backs now. Day 2 capital on 2 running backs in a row. Round 2 capital on 2 running backs in a row. Like, I just think that speaks volumes, and we've known this about Pete Carroll his entire career. Coaching, right? He wants to run the ball. Bill taught him to run the ball inside the 5, so he's going to continue to run the ball when he gets in the red zone. And I just think that kind of contributes to Geno. Like, I think Geno could have an amazing year and only throw 24 touchdowns. I do, right? Because just what they need from him on offense, I think that's how he could feel. So I think that's within the range of outcomes for Geno Smith.
So I've got a question for you guys then. Is Geno Smith last year's Jared Goff to a certain extent, where Jared Goff was efficient, but it wasn't like the flashiest stat lines, and it was only like 20.
Geno this year gonna be last year.
Correct. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm like, wait, how? So you're just asking if they were the same player? No, but
I think so. I think that's kind of going to be kind of similar. I think he'll have some really good games where he'll be like, wow, Geno looks good. But I think there's going to be games where he plays well from an NFL standpoint, but you're just from a fantasy standpoint, like, that was 13 fantasy points. He only threw 1 touchdown. I mean, he had 250 yards. They won the game, but it was just kind of,
I'm more in than out on Geno. I would say I was definitely more out than in on Jared Goff throughout the season last year, because it was just awful. You couldn't, like, it was either if Jared Goff was on the road, he was unplayable.
Yep.
At home, you could totally play him. I don't think Geno's going to be that unpredictable. I think he'll probably be more of a consistent guy, but he won't be, look, Geno threw up 42 this week. He might 1 week, but, like, I don't think Geno's going to be a consistent, like, 19, 20 point, 18 point scorer.
Yeah.
Like last year. I just don't see that in the cards for him. Yeah. So I think he'll be more predictable than Jared Goff last year. But at the same time, I'm just expecting him to take a step back this year. Let's keep it moving here, though, because we still have 9 guys to talk about, and we're already 30 minutes in. Let's quick talk about Dak Prescott, who I think is becoming slightly underrated in the fantasy football realm. Only played 12 games last year, right? Had that brutal finger injury to start the season in week 1 against Tampa. 261, 394, nearly 2,900 yards, 23 touchdowns, 15 picks. So that's pretty ugly. Through average over 1 interception per game. Adds Brandon Cooks, though, lost Dalton Schultz, and for now Ezekiel Elliott. There's potential that he signs back with Dallas. We will see. He's my quarterback 9. Tyler, your quarterback 10. Cam, your quarterback 11. We're all right in the same range. I think we all feel relatively the same on about Dak Prescott. Let me say this about Dak Prescott, though. I'm seeing him going in the like quarterback 12 range over on Underdog Fantasy, which promo code fellas, $100 deposit match when you use that code when you sign up. He was a quarterback 6 the rest of the season when he returned from injury last year. I mean, the fantasy points per game weren't great. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, man, you know what? Dak, man, dude was averaging a nasty 17 fantasy points per game. That's like not the right home ball. He was a quarterback 6 still. Yeah. That means something to me. I know people are like, oh, we don't like total points. Don't use total points. At the same time, though, I mean, we're the guys who are still ahead of him. We're still the Jalen Hurtses. We're still the Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. We're still the Josh Allens. We're still the Joe Burrows. All those guys were still ahead of him. So I think it's perfectly fine that we have Dak at the quarterback 9. I like him here. I think he still is a top 10 fantasy quarterback. What makes or breaks his top 10 status, though?
think it's going to just come down to. I think for most of these quarterbacks in this range, it just comes down to touchdowns, and like if he has an absurd amount of interceptions like he did last year, I think that could affect it as well, right? He was over an interception per game. I don't think that continues. I think that was the outlier. But right, if Dak throws up 25 touchdowns, that would be a very different season than if he throws up 33 touchdowns. And I think he's capable of both, right? We've seen him on pace for both. We've seen him do both. And I think that's just going to be kind of what it comes down to of, this could be the year where he does put up 33, 34. They don't have a Zeke where they're going to be able to pound it in, all the time from, within 5 like they have with Zeke. But at the same time, they have Brian Schottenheimer as their offensive coordinator who wants to try to pound it in every time they're inside the 20. So I think that's just going to be it'll be interesting to just see how that works out in Dallas this season.
Dak was first in red zone completion percentage last year as well. I don't expect that. Well, maybe it might remain the same. It depends how much Brian Schottenheimer wants to actually use Dak Prescott in the red zone. Would you agree with that, Tyler, overall?
Yeah, I mean that's the question mark that I've got for Dak is just how exactly is this offense going to operate? Because for the past couple of years we've gotten Kellen Moore, and that's been a very pass-happy offense. Now, granted, Schottenheimer was around when Russell Wilson was around in Seattle, and Russell Wilson was considered to be a top 5 quarterback in the league, and that translated fairly well into fantasy stuff. So there will be a deep dive will be needed into Dak and exactly the system that he will play, because maybe the solution is that Dak is going to have some more rushing opportunities in the red zone. And we saw that in the playoffs, that he kind of took a step forward in confidence when it came to running the ball. So maybe that's the solution for the Cowboys offense, which adds even more intrigue to Dak Prescott. But we need to get back on the train of he's a very solid option for quarterbacks in fantasy.
Alrighty, we've been yapping at you for 37 minutes. Let's take a quick break here from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy, and we will be back with quarterbacks 1 through 8. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. Trevor Lawrence is our quarterback 8. Consensus quarterback 8 for all of us. It feels like Trevor Lawrence just kind of fits perfectly here. He's clearly better than everybody we've mentioned, maybe the exception of 1 or 2 guys, right? If Deshaun Watson ends up cracking the top 10, Trevor Lawrence probably could potentially be a guy that he leapfrogs. We'll see. But he's not quite in the same tier as the next guys we're going to be discussing. Look, Trevor Lawrence turned it around last year. 387 to 584 for 4,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Really brought those turnovers down. Added 62 rushing attempts, 5 touchdowns on the ground. He doubled his touchdowns and cut those interceptions in half, as I mentioned, between years 1 and 2. He also gets Calvin Ridley this year. That's Tank Bigsby to the backfield, though I think that impacts Travis Etienne more than it does anything for Trevor Lawrence. But this just feels right for Trevor Lawrence. Does it not? I don't know how much either of you want to say. This is just kind of sorry, man. You're not quite able to get over the hump and don't quite have the same rushing upside as a bunch of the top 7 guys. And I don't think this offense is going to throw the ball 575 times, 580 times. Well, they did last year, but I wonder if Doug Peterson wants to change that up a little bit this year. I don't know. This just feels right. I feel like we can't put Trevor Lawrence any higher, but he doesn't belong any lower than 8 or 9.
I have a confession. I fear that we are very low on Trevor Lawrence this year. I feel like we have a big Trevor Lawrence breakout coming. I do. I don't think I'm going to end up moving him higher in my rankings, but I just feel like Trevor Lawrence is on the cusp of having an amazing year, and I think this might be the cast to do it. But like I said, I don't know if I believe it strongly enough to truly change my rankings, but it's just like a gut feeling I've been having for the last couple of weeks of feel like I'm going to be too low on Trevor Lawrence, and I'm not going to have him in enough places.
Now, my question for you, since you are ranking your quarterbacks into tiers and stuff,
Yep.
where does Trevor Lawrence fall in your tiers?
So I got him with Justin Fields. I got them right behind the Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson tier. And Justin Herbert tier. I might bump Justin Herbert down into their tier as well. The way I have my tiers ranked is they're guys that I think could finish like within the same spots as each other, with the potential to either bump up to the tier in front of them or bump down to the tier behind them. And so like I think Trevor Lawrence could bump up into that Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson tier. I think he could potentially fall down outside the top 10, but I do think he's kind of in that Justin Fields, probably Justin Herbert range.
Yeah, because I was kind of in my own head putting these quarterbacks into tiers myself. And I'm like, well, Tack, Geno, Deshaun, does Trevor Lawrence go in that tier? And I'm like, no, that feels a little too low. But then you start talking like Justin Fields and Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson, and you're like, yeah, that feels more right. It's definitely not like the Burrow and Josh Allen's of the world and stuff, but like Trevor Lawrence is that like little like third tier, second tier, and it's still going to be a very valuable option in fantasy.
Yeah.
And like you said, Doug Peterson did wonders for Trevor Lawrence last year.
Yeah.
Why not take another step forward?
They easily could. I just can't put him ahead of any of the guys we're about to mention. And starting with Justin Fields, you said you had him and Justin Fields in the same tier,
Yep.
Cameron. Here's the thing about Justin Fields though, like his stats from last year, not pretty, right? Like 192 to 318. That ain't that great. 2,200 passing yards. Ugh. Can you throw the ball? He can. 17 touchdowns with 11 picks. Not great for Justin Fields. Here's the thing though. 160 rushing attempts. That was second most in the league last year. 1,100 rushing yards. That man was first in rushing yards by over 350 yards. That's insane. Yeah. What's crazy is his efficiency only went up by 0.2 yards between his rookie season and his sophomore year. Yeah. Like at 7 yards attempt for Justin Fields is like no biggie. I love Justin Fields this year. I put it in our group chat when I started statting out quarterbacks. I started statting out Chicago Bears. I go, woohoo! I'm on the Chicago Bears, so I can stat out Justin Fields as a top 4 quarterback. I currently have him as a quarterback 6. That's not with all my quarterbacks officially statted out. So this ranking is separate from my final projections. But Fields is my quarterback 6, quarterback 7 for both of you. And this is purely rushing upside, right? Like he gets DJ Moore. Cole Kmet was our leading receiver last year. He is him. Cole Kmet stand for life. Darnell Mooney is still there. You add Roshan Johnson, Deontay Foreman to this backfield. I don't think they make much of an impact. DJ Moore will, but in terms of Justin Fields' passing ability, they don't really make much of a difference, that being Roshan Johnson, Deontay Foreman. Like, how much better does DJ Moore make Justin Fields, though? Because I think that's what it comes down to. Do you believe Justin Fields can finish higher than he did last year because he adds DJ Moore? Or is he still just relatively the same because the guys ahead of him are still just going to be that much better given their skill and talent level?
So I think that DJ Moore can truly elevate Justin Fields to a Daniel Jones passing level, which is not great, but it is better than 2,200 yards. Like
you may as well have just said he got taken off of the night shift, dog. Like that's the equivalent. That ain't mean nothing.
He has to get better passing. 2,200 yards is insane. Did you see the stat that Justin Jefferson was 36th in yards per passing yards per game, and Justin Fields was 34th? Justin Fields is only 2 spots higher in passing yards per game than Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
And Jefferson had like 11 yards or like 4 yards per game or something ridiculously low like that. So like he has to get better passing, but I just don't think it's gonna I don't think he's gonna miraculously throw 4,000 yards.
I feel like we're a year out from a prolific like passer in Justin Fields. We'll see improvement from last year because the only way to go is up. That's how bad it was last year. It can only go up. But I just I know you made a TikTok, Lucas. I don't know how long ago, but you compared Justin Fields and DJ Moore to when Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs, Jalen Hurts getting AJ Brown, and you made it clear right away. That's not the expectation.
No.
It's not the expectation. But getting a proven wide receiver like DJ Moore helps a quarterback. It's just a matter of where do you rank DJ Moore? Because to me, DJ Moore is barely cracking top 20, and he's somewhere between 20 and 25 versus an AJ Brown, who is a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy and all that kind of stuff. But let's just get back to Justin Fields. The rushing upside is still going to be there. They still want to use it in the offense. Yeah. That has to be the main reason why you take Justin Fields.
Yeah. I want to reiterate that DJ Moore is not going to take Justin Fields to the Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen level. The main conclusion I came to in that video is that the Bears are following a previous model of success that was demonstrated to them, and they're trying to set their franchise quarterback up for success. That's what that move was all about, and it will improve Justin Fields as a passer. By how much is yet to be seen, but I don't think it's going to be this, all of a sudden he throws for 1,500 more yards this year because of DJ Moore. I don't think that's the case. If Justin Fields is knocking on 3,000, I think you'll be happy as a fantasy manager.
For sure.
But again, the wheels are what's going to give him top 5 upside every single week. And he's worthy of being a weekly starter based on what we saw.
Definitely.
To close out the season last year. Let's keep it rolling. Justin Herbert is our quarterback 6. I think we all agree he's in for a bounce back year. He's my quarterback 7. I have him behind Justin Fields. Cammy's your quarterback 6. Ty, your quarterback 5. I could read off all the numbers of Justin Herbert's season last year. I think it helps to contextualize them, though, because I think we can get lost in the weeds of look at all these yards, look at all these attempts. What really changed? So Justin Herbert last year, he had 27 more attempts than in 2021, but 275 less yards. So efficiency went down. His touchdowns dropped from 31 and 38 his first 2 years in the league to 25 last season. A 13 total drop in touchdowns. That's drastic. Multiply that by 6. Cameron, you're our math guy. How many points is that you lose on Justin Herbert automatically?
99. 13 times 6? Is that what you just asked me?
Yes.
99. Nope. It's not 99. It's
by 4. Well, no, by 4 passing touchdowns. Yeah.
40, 12, 52.
52. So you lose 52 points automatically.
99 wasn't right either.
I was going to say, I'm 99 wasn't right, but I was going to
78. That was what it was.
Someone give me a calculator.
Oof, all right. My bad. Zoned out.
We need to cut that out.
52 points. He loses 52 points. His rushing yards dropped by over 150. There's another 15 points gone. Oh, and his rushing touchdowns, this is where the 6 can come into play. 6 times 0 last year.
0.
He had 5 rushing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns in 2 years prior. So you're losing anywhere from 18 to 30 points there. You're looking at over 100 points differentiated from Justin Herbert last year. That's a contextualization of the drop off. You can look at the raw numbers and say, I don't know, nothing really changed. But the touchdowns, they took a hit last year. That's big. That is big. But you add Kellen Moore now. You add Quentin Johnston. You get Mike Will and Keenan Allen back healthy. You still have Austin Eckler in the backfield. There's no reason Justin Herbert can't finish top 5 again this year.
No.
Tyler, you have him there.
Yeah. In the other part too, he's going to be fully healthy this year.
Yes.
He battled a rib injury last year, and that can explain the drop in rushing. I'm not going to say opportunities, but the lack of rushing from Justin Herbert compared to other years. again, yeah, Mike Will, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson. That's a really nice trio of wide receivers. And let's not forget, Gerald Everett was pushing top 10 tight end status for most of the year.
Yeah.
So the biggest reason, though, is Kellen Moore.
Yeah. Yep.
You saw it in Dallas, and now Kellen Moore gets arguably a top 5 quarterback just on talent alone.
Yep.
A much better receiving core than in Dallas, and I'm not saying that CeeDee Lamb is a bad wide receiver, but you're getting 3 very solid options.
Yeah.
There's a lot of potential for him to rebound, and you never want to go into the like guaranteed territory, but this is as close as you can get to a guaranteed bounce back.
He's got to be the number 1 bounce back candidate this year. He has to be. Like, he's too talented. He's in too good of an offense. He gets an upgraded offensive coordinator who wants to chuck the football around the field. Like, I don't see how Justin Herbert doesn't have a bounce back season this year to that borderline top 5 status. He'll probably be top 7 for sure. I would be willing to put a stamp of certainty on it. Lamar Jackson, quarterback 5, the man with the new contract, Lamar Jackson. 12 games last year, 203 or 326 for 2,200 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 17 picks, 764 rushing yards on 112 rushing attempts. That's pretty good in 12 games. He probably would have been a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing about Lamar, though. He hasn't played a full season in 4 years. Now, again, we stat all these players out. We stat them on a 17-game basis because we can't predict injuries. So when we provide our projections to you, well, they're on a 17-game basis, but then please take our projections and do what you want with them. Mm-hmm. That's why we give them to you. Because you can decide how many games you think they're going to miss. We can decide how many games we think they're going to miss on our own, but we're going to stat them out to 17 to give you a perfectly tiered list in terms of, should nothing go wrong in a season, this is how we would draft players, and that's how you have to go into every fantasy draft. Yep. You can boil in injury risk however you want. That's different for every person, though. Mm-hmm. And that's why we don't do it in our projections. Have to get that out of the way. He's only played 12 games the last 2 years as well, Lamar Jackson has. His rushing touchdowns, they've also fallen off as well. 7 rushing touchdowns in both 2019 and 2020, but in the past 2 years, only 5 total rushing touchdowns. 2 in 2021, 3 in 2022, despite playing 12 games and 15 in the 2 years prior. He's too dynamic to not have in the top 5, though. Can we just agree on that? And now that he has a contract, new weapons around him, Zay Flowers, they brought in OBJ. You can debate the contract all you want, but it's more weapons for Lamar. They seem to be committed to him. You got Todd Monken coming in. Think 30-30 Jameis Winston. Todd Monken was the offensive coordinator then for Tampa Bay at that point. The rushing upside is there. The weapons are there. The offensive coordinator with the passing upside is there. There's no reason Lamar can't be top 5. And if he plays the full season, he will be top 5.
Yep.
How, do we need to add more?
Yeah, I just think it's important too. We were talking about the rushing. Justin Fields averaged 67 rush yards a game. Lamar Jackson averaged 63. Yep. So it's Justin Fields only averaged 4 more rushing yards a game. So Lamar's still on a crazy rate. And Lamar had the same amount of passing yards and passing touchdowns as Justin Fields did in only 12 games. So Lamar's still got a pretty decent passing upside. Like Lucas said, they're going to throw the ball more, and he's still an insane rusher when he has the ball in his hands.
Yeah, one of the most underrated stacks last year, Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see how that works this year now with Odell and Zay Flowers and a fully healthy Rashad Bateman. But you know the talent of Lamar Jackson. Don't bet against it.
100%. Let's keep it moving. Another talent you don't want to bet against. Joe Burrow. Sorry, as I smack a fruit fly on my microphone. Joe Burrow, 610 passing attempts last year, 418 completions, 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Jamar Chase, he also missed 4 games last year too, so that's pretty good. You just look at some of Joe Burrow's raw metrics though. This is what's fascinating to me. His pass attempts increased, right? He went up from 520 to 606. 80 passing attempts. They were not afraid to throw the ball last year. Still had about 130 less yards, which efficiency-wise doesn't mean a lot. Mm-hmm. His touchdown to interception ratio basically the same. What's interesting, though, is that Joe Burrow's rushing attempts increased by 35, nearly doubled last year. Went from 2 rushing touchdowns to 5 rushing touchdowns. So all of a sudden, you're getting like a little sneaky rushing floor for Joe Burrow. It's not like nowhere near Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, nowhere near those guys. But like again, if 90 is the magic number, right? Like, again, like Joe Burrow is going to be top 5 no matter what, but he's getting a little sneaky safe floor there all of a sudden. Like Joe Burrow might be one of the safest top 5 options you have, where a guy like Lamar or Fields, like, I don't know if anybody can bump their way past Burrow if he has that floor and still maintains this efficiency. I don't know if they'll throw for 606 times again this year. It'll probably depend on the availability of Joe Mixon, if we're being perfectly honest. But if he has that sneaky safe rushing floor, like Joe Burrow's a top 4 lock. You can't we have him at 5, but again, like top 5 lock, we'll say that for sure. I don't think you can have him any lower.
No, and like you said, the rushing's up because the ACL is fully healthy. Yeah. I think that's something we forget that first year that he was still coming back from the ACL. But you have Jamar Chase, you have T. Higgins. And I think last year we all were kind of like, hey, let's take a step back on Joe Burrow. This efficiency was insane. Like from a logical standpoint, he should not, from an efficiency point, kept it up. But then they up the pass attempts. And I think he's just proved 2 years in a row that you just can't bet against this offense because they're going to score a lot of points and they're going to get a lot of yards. And you can't ask for more from your fantasy quarterback.
And one of my sneaky favorite best ball choices, here's a little free info for you. Tyler Boyd as your wide receiver 5 or 6 is a home run pick because he's guaranteed to give you like 20, 25 a week. That's because he has Joe Burrow as a quarterback. Yeah. You try to get any Bengals player for your fantasy team. They will pay dividends.
Yeah.
We're going to keep moving. We don't need to say much more on Joe Burrow. Josh Allen is our quarterback 3. He's my quarterback 3. He's each of your quarterback 2s. I feel like people want to talk about Josh Allen at the tail end of last season, how he kept falling off. He wasn't as good at the tail end of last season. I don't know, man. The numbers don't say that. Fantasy-wise, they don't say that. Mm-hmm. You can look at the box score stats, but you're just box score stat hunting. He was the quarterback 2 in the second half of the season in the fantasy playoffs. He was still the quarterback 2. The only reason why Josh Allen is my quarterback 2 is because Jalen Hurts is my quarterback 1. Or Josh Allen is my quarterback 3 is because Jalen Hurts is my quarterback 1. That's it. Josh Allen's a top 3 lock. Great arm, great rushing upside. You add Dalton Kincaid. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. I don't care if you have Josh Allen 1, 2, or 3. I really don't. I have him at 3. My preference is with Jalen Hurts and Mahomes, but you two having him at 2 is by no means a crime. We don't need to sit here and debate if Josh Allen is. Does Josh Allen need to be the number 1 overall quarterback this year, or are we all insane? We don't need to debate that because it's those 3. They're in a tier of their own.
No, I agree. I think you look at Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, great rushing upside, awesome wide receiver 1. And then Patrick Mahomes might be, at the end of the day, the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. Yeah. So that's why you have those in your top 3, and you don't debate it. You don't move around. You don't get cute and go, maybe I take Burrow here. No, it's these 3, and then it's everybody else. No discussion needed.
Keep it moving.
Capiche capoche. Patrick Mahomes is our quarterback 2. Historic MVP season from Mahomes last year. Record 5,200 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, only 12 interceptions, 648 passing attempts, added 358 and 4 scores on the ground. Really, only addition here is Rasheed Rice. They lose Juju Smith-Schuster, but you can.
Is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah, he's my quarterback 2, came to quarterback 1, Tyre quarterback 3. Again, he's just not a guy you get cute with at all whatsoever. You don't say because he has no weapons, he's not going to be a top option. I got a little bit cute, admittedly, last year and had him as my quarterback 4.
I did too.
And that was just because I don't see it. But Travis Kelce is still there. Kadarius Toney and whatever hamstrings he can muster up and buy off of eBay on a given week. I mean, it's not good, man. The weapons are not good. But Mahomes is too great. And Jalen Hurts is our quarterback 1. Ty and I have met 1. Cam, you have met 3. The rushing upside is what beats out Jalen Hurts, beats out Mahomes for Jalen Hurts. For me, he was quarterback 1 fantasy points per game last year. That's what it comes down to. I'll take the rushing upside. I'll take this offense that, look, their defense has got a whole lot better. I think Jalen Hurts will still rush the ball in. I don't know, man. Like, Jalen Hurts is just so freaking good.
Yeah.
It's those 3. You can have them in whatever order you want. Is there anything you two want to add on either one?
Only reason I got Hurts as 3 is he had record-breaking 13 rushing touchdowns.
That's fair.
I don't think he hits that again, but I do think the passing touchdowns could go up then, right?
Right.
It's a give or take, but that, like
Right.
we said, it doesn't matter. It's pretty much take whoever you like the most in the top 3 here.
There it is, our top 15 quarterbacks. Early, going into the 2023 fantasy football season, we will be bringing you our full, complete, and tweaked projections later in the offseason. In the August range, I believe, we will be bringing you another top positional breakdown. Once we're finished statting them out, once we make the tweaks, once we know what's coming out at training camp, once we have more info, we'll make all those tweaks. We'll be back with a more clear and concise top 15 rankings list. We'll also be I believe it's about halfway through June. We'll do another check-in on the rankings as well. We'll do a tier list in a more of a short form 10, 12-minute YouTube video as well. I'm listing out a lot of content you should be looking out for, so that means you should probably just subscribe to the YouTube channel while you're at it. And if you listen to the podcast, hey, if you're not subscribed there, please do us a favor. Leave us a review, subscribe over there as well. It helps us out immensely. We're greatly appreciative of all of your support. It's good to have all 3 of us back in person again.
Yes, sir.
Let's do this again sometime soon, like maybe next episode.
Oh,
that we'll probably record in about 10 minutes. We're doing double duty tonight. We're 3 stooges being dudes and fantasy football fellas. We will see you all. I guess this episode is coming out on Wednesday this week. We will see you all tomorrow, because Thursday's episode will still be Thursday. We'll see you all tomorrow for our top 20 running back rankings. Deuces.